Hello. Sorry, just setting up here. Hi Ev, how are you? My sound okay today? Sound and video are great. Fantastic. And I just need to get my secondary device set up. How is everyone? I see Ev and Gabor. Hi Lori. Bit tired from work. Cool. Well, we'll see how tired I am after this. Looking forward to this. So, I got a really interesting question, actually a couple months ago, from one of my private students about painting backgrounds, and particularly painting natural backgrounds like foliage and making them not look like camo, which is definitely an issue with a lot of natural backgrounds, as it's very easy to end up with something that looks like you're painting a camouflage background, which I guess makes sense because camo is designed to blend into a natural background, but it's not really what you want when you're painting a background. So how do you avoid that? And it's definitely something that I ran into and have questioned, even though I don't, painting primarily botanical myself, just given the usual way that that botanical paintings are structured. I don't often have a full background. Sorry, I'm just gonna try to see this chat here. Anyway, yeah, so I don't frequently paint backgrounds necessarily, but I think that this applies whether you're painting a background or whether you're just painting a landscape, or even, I think it's sort of the same sort of question as if you're painting multiple subjects in a botanical piece and you want to have some depth, is how do you create that depth and add some interest around your central subject without just ending up very busy and muddled. So I'm gonna make this into, I think that this is the sort of question that will be best presented in a blog post, but to make a blog post I need to create a bunch of visual examples and sort out all the thoughts I have about this in my brain. So I'm gonna do that in today's video. So today's video will be sort of answering the question of how to make backgrounds that don't look like camo, but it'll be done in a sort of stream of consciousness not super structured way, and then I'll make the structured answer out of it with the examples I picked today, if everyone is cool with that. Cool. Nice. Hi, Thea. Welcome. So I guess the first thing that I kind of want to address is, what does camo look like? So if we are trying to avoid looking like camo, you know, what are the attributes of camo that we frequently associate with camouflage? I think there's a few things that I would identify as probably camo or camo-like. And I'm going to use colored pencil for this because then I don't have to wait for it to dry, and I'm just doing a little teeny tiny little example here. So the first thing is in a lot of camouflage patterns, you're going to have fairly mid-tone colors. So I've addressed this a few times before, but if we are if we are painting or drawing any subject, whether it is a completely white subject or completely dark subject, it's important to have the full gamut range represented in any subject we paint. So here I'm just doing this in pen, but no matter what I am painting, I want to have the darkest dark I can make and the lightest light and the full gamut range between them. And what you will see in camo patterns is, because you know this is something that somebody is wearing and it is interacting with light around them, is that you will have all of the real painting. I don't really should have full gamut. No, sorry, gamut. What am I talking about? Not gamut. Tonal range. And camo, value. Yes, value. Tonal, value. Yes, value. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, see, These live streams are super organized because I'm just sorting things out as I go. Okay, so we're just taking a peek inside my messy brain. All right, and camo, by contrast, frequently has only a few middle values. So that would be like these ones in here, right? You're not going to have the darkest darks nor the lightest lights, and those will be created by the camo itself. You know, if somebody's wearing it, it will then interact with the lighting situations to create those darks and lights. And so what you're going to end up having in camo is you're going to have a bunch of shapes, and they're just going to be evenly distributed around your surface, and they're all going to be this sort of middle color. So you might have some yellower green here, and then you might have another green, and it might be a little bit darker, but it won't be fully black. And it's going to go here, so you're going to have this and this other thing here, and this one here, and over here, and there, for example. And then you might have a brown, and your brown's going to go over here, and over here. And it's, you know, so two things that I'm going to notice about this. After a 4-hour-long workshop today, this feels super organized to me. Well, I mean, I have been thinking about it for a while because the question was asked to me and I didn't really have an answer right away. I feel like this is the sort of thing that, like, teaching is great because I learn a lot, sort of things that I sort of subconsciously picked up but never really fully processed. And a lot of those things, then when a student asks, it forces me to really think about. And I feel like that can be really helpful in a way. And so my sense is that camo tends to be all, you're not going to have very, very dark values. You're not going to have very, very light values. Everything's going to be sort of middle values. So camo. What not to do. And so, 1, only middle values. No very, very dark or light. The other thing that I want to bring up about this camo pattern is that all of the different tones and colors are very evenly distributed. So, you know, you're going to have a brown on one side, a brown over here, a brown over on the other side, and there's no distinguishing between the middle of the picture or the focal area. There's no difference across the entire flat surface. So the second thing is even distribution of tonal and gamut range across the surface. So that's another thing. A third thing is you can definitely have some different forms of camo. Like I have seen, you know, pink or purple camo, for example, sold, and it's possible to do it, but generally there's certain colors that we associate with camo. You know, certain shades of greens and yellows and browns. And so it'll be easier to avoid a camo look if you avoid classic camo colors, right? Like, yes, you can create a camo pattern with, say, these colors, but it's going to be a little bit harder. So 2 and 3. So classic camo colors, like chrome oxide, dull green, sage green, yellow green, and like brown, right? Those are your standard, easier to avoid camo look with others. So for that example, if I were to draw the very same thing over again, and I'm just gonna do the same sort of camo pattern. So I'm just drawing the exact same sort of shapes as over here, only I'm drawing with them with a range of pinks. And we'll see right away that even with that, it's going to look less like camo, although it will still probably, you know, given that I'm deliberately drawing a camo pattern here, it is still going to look a little bit like camo. But it's, you know, already going to be less. use this one. This one's a little different. Yeah, okay. So even though this is basically exactly the same as this, they're both sort of mid-tones. They're both these sort of, I guess, for these blobby shapes. Usually, although, you know, modern camo can be all sorts of different things. So even though they're both these sort of blobby shapes, they're both these middle tones, they're both evenly distributed. This one's automatically just going to look more like camo because it's the colors that we associate with camo than this one. Like you kind of have to be trying. And so then the next question is, if we mix multiple color families, I feel like that's also gonna make it look less like camo. So if I say I'm gonna have green and this dark green, and I'm gonna have a bright pink and a dark pink and a yellow, right? And so I'm gonna mix these and I'm gonna create another one of these little pattern things. And I think that that's gonna look a little less like camo right off the top. So if I do this, and then I do this thing and I draw some dark green here, some over here, maybe some over here. And add another one over on this side. Fill this between these two. And it's not touching anything over here. And there. And then we take a yellow, and so far it feels like it's going to be looking very similar to this one up here. But then if I start, okay, well now I'm going to put in reds. So here we have something that might actually help you camouflage with something, but I don't think that it's as recognizable as like a standard camo, either of these kinds. So here we have point number 5, which is going to be same color family, usually. Okay, so that's just in terms of the colors that are used and the shapes of. Hi, Stephen. How are you? So just to recap what I'm doing today, I got a question from a private student about how to paint backgrounds that don't look like camo. And it was an interesting question because, first of all, I don't really paint backgrounds super frequently. But I think it's definitely something that I have questioned, especially earlier on when I started painting, is how to make things not blend in with the backgrounds and how to make like diffuse, like blurry backgrounds for foliage and whatever, and have them not just look like I put everything on a camo background. Even though, you know, that's what camo is for. And I think I've kind of, you know, subconsciously solved that problem for myself, but it really took some thought to figure out what it is that makes a background look like camo. So I'm sorting out my thoughts for this blog post here. And yeah. So this is me organizing my thoughts, which means this is all going to be presented in a sort of disorganized way. And then I'm going to paint out some samples, I think, for the blog post to post with these. So I'm sort of answering the question, but in a really convoluted and roundabout way here, and then I'll make it into a blog post that's organized and makes sense later. If that, yeah, makes sense that Army Green 17 would not be a good one. Yeah, so like so far I've gone through sort of what are the attributes of camo. So there's a lot of middle values. There's a lot of like classic camo colors. So like if you choose other colors for your background, even if you choose a camo pattern, this is less likely to read as camo in the context of a painting than this is. You're gonna have the same colors distributed over the whole background versus, you know, if you have, I guess that's the other thing, is if you have these same colors, but they are distributed where you have a lot more yellow on one side and a lot more green on the other, it's already gonna look a lot less like camo, like even if I draw the same shapes over and over again. And so I am gonna do these in watercolor and a little bit bigger in a different sketchbook in a moment, but so if I distribute these a little differently, where I say, okay, well, we're gonna have a lot of this, we're just gonna have a lot more these shapes here, and I'm gonna put this over here. And and then I put the browns only in this side. So this is already gonna look less like camo than this one, even though it's the same colors and the same shapes. There's camo for camouflage and then camo for fashion too, where you get pink and black camo or other bright colors and high contrast. Yeah, so you can do this and you can, but I think that in terms of art, you're gonna, like, you're more likely to be disappointed with this result than you would be with this. Like, I feel like even though this is, yes, you can make a very, you know, like if I define this a little bit more, I can make something that looks like camo here, but it's less likely to, I am less likely to run into the situation where, oh no, I accidentally made a pink background on my, like, even though it's possible to make pink camo that everyone recognizes as pink camo, it's less likely that while painting a pink background for a painting that I'm going to run into something and be like, oh my goodness, it looks too much like camo. Right? So I think, you know, you can't, first of all, it's a distribution where each of the colors is going to have to be evenly distributed. There's the choice of colors, where you can make your life a little bit easier by choosing something like a pink, or by blending different types of colors. By having more of one of the types of, or more of, you know, having some kind of gradient across your painting is gonna help with that. But I think the last thing is, and this is probably the, this is like a game. Here's this abstract blob of colors. Now tell me what it reminds you. If nothing, then this is camo, right? The bottom one looks like a pond to me with yellow grass. Yeah, so I think that you can create some of that if you are designing your own background or you're designing your own painting. You can decide to have an area that's a different color. Like you're gonna, you know, I'm gonna put more of the yellows on this side and more of the greens on the other side, and to try to create that differentiation where this one doesn't look as much like camo to me as this one. The other thing is, honestly, I think that a lot of it comes down to foreground, middle ground, background. So if we have background to D to foreground. So blurrier, less contrast. And generally, if you're talking about natural light, it's also, oh, oh, I'm getting spinnies, but only on, yeah, if I look at my phone here, I'm not getting spinnies. Okay, so it's just this. All right, well, in that case, we are just going to refresh my own weird. No, what happened? Okay, I don't know what's happening here. Hi, Cyan. Hi, Joy. Hi, Lise. Okay, well, it seems like it's working for everyone else. It's just my own issue that I don't know what's going on here. No, sorry, I don't. Yeah, sorry, I don't really know what's going on with my devices, but I'm glad that at least my phone seems to be not buffering, since that's the one that affects everyone else. Moxie! Sorry. So, background to foreground. Hi, Paulo, how are you? Sorry, what was I thinking? Okay, so things that are in the background are going to be blurrier, they're going to have less contrast, and in general, if we're talking about natural light, and this one always seems backwards to me, they're also going to be lighter valued. And as we get closer, we're going to have higher contrast and darker value. And wherever we have focus, somewhere in the middle, focus is going to have least blur, right? So I think the final thing is designing your painting so that you have, I'm gonna grab this again. This is interesting. It doesn't have a background per se, but I think it follows a lot of the same concepts, is where things are coming out further out, you're gonna have, this is gonna be darker and you're gonna have the highest contrast and the most detail. And where you have things that are further back, you're gonna go back towards a lighter value and a blurrier, like less contrast, less detail. Getting Moxie used to Lee's voice, except she's gone from dreaming about catching a ping pong ball to running around looking for it. Aww. Probably need to jump on and off. Ruka doesn't seem to feel very well. Sorry, Siam. Is that wild garlic? Yeah, or wild leeks. They're called ramps. So they're the North American wild leeks. They're very similar to like bear garlic or ramsons or wild garlic, which I think is a European thing. But these are native to right here. So yeah. I think. So when you're designing your painting, it's useful to figure out, I guess, where your different things are going to be. And so then you're going to have something that's blurry but really dark in the foreground, for example. So you can choose like, oh, I'm going to have a foreground piece that's right over here and whatever, like I'm going to have some leaves coming in and just a little bit of stuff here. And then over in here, I'm going to have my bird, right? Or whatever. Say this is my main thing. And then over in the background, I'm just going to have something that's really, really, really light and diffuse. And so then if I'm moving that to over here and I'm painting that, I can say, okay, so the first thing is I'm gonna have a full value range. And so then I'm gonna have something like this, where I have whatever, call it a leaf. You know, it can be something like a And over here where it's closest, it's going to be like dark, dark. It's going to be pen dark. One landscape painting in progress that I've been struggling with depth. Yeah, this was again, sometimes I get, the thing about being an artist, I'm sure that a lot of you have gotten this too, is people hear, oh, you're an artist, and they have all sorts of suggestions. And I would say like 9 times out of 10, it's like, yeah, thanks. No, it's not gonna happen. You know what you should really paint? You should paint a tarot deck. Not gonna happen. You know what you should really, really paint? You should paint all of the planets of the solar system. You know what you should really, really blog about? So, I get this constantly. I'm sure that all of the other artists here also get this constantly. But every so often, it's definitely not the majority, but every so often I get a question or a suggestion like that that's actually brilliant and like really makes me think, and I think it's like something really interesting, and then I want to dive into it. So this was a question from a student, and I mean, this is a little different because she was asking me, she pays me for coaching. And so she was asking this as a context of like, can you help me with this problem? Which is already something completely different, and that's already okay. Like no matter what. But in this case, it was a really, really interesting question. And so I asked her for permission, like, could I make this into a blog post? Because I can sort of start thinking of some answers for you, but I feel like this is a really interesting question. So her question was, I'm painting nature scenes. I'm painting, an animal in nature with foliage in the background, and every time I paint the background, it comes out looking like I painted some camo in the background. How do I avoid that? Maybe you should paint a massive illustration for a cult. I mean, sure, but next time I'm charging I've decided to call it a client management fee. And I will adjust the client management fee. Like, is it 100% surcharge or a 200% surcharge? Like, the crazier I think the client is, the higher the client management fee. Anyway, no client management fee here. This is a really cool question. And also, this was a student who asked this in a completely appropriate way in a class that she paid me for. Maybe you should paint your feelings about people telling you what to paint. No, but I mean, seriously, like, occasionally I get something that's brilliant. I was talking to a nutritionist yesterday who they're food scientist, and she was looking at artwork for her office, and who knows, I mean, she's considering a few things to buy, but she brought up the idea of the Canada Food Guide, and whether or not she ends up buying that painting or licensing that painting, I'm going to paint the Canada Food Guide because it's a brilliant idea, because it solves a problem that I have, which is I've been meaning to send out postcards to art directors for magazines and stuff. Like, I really love doing editorial work, and I want to do more, but a lot of editorial work has some different focus than what a lot of my portfolio has. So I wanted to make some portfolio pieces that were particularly suited to editorial. And I was trying to figure out, like, in an infographic type piece that I could do for the front of a postcard or for a portfolio piece, that like conveys, that has like a variety of different painting techniques, a variety of different colors and textures to paint, and has a very full, like, busy looking sorry, like, it fills up a page and it's got a whole bunch of different textures. It really shows a variety of skills, but it's also very simple to understand, so that I can have something that's like infographic like, that's showing illustration, like it's really clear what I'm communicating just from the image without having to include labels and stuff. And so you need something very, very recognizable. And so the Canada Food Guide is brilliant. It's exactly that. It's the new Canada Food Guide. They've updated it, so it's just a plate, and it's got half of it is fruits and vegetables, and then it's got a quarter proteins. So whether it's meat or cheese or eggs or vegetable proteins like beans and legumes and seeds, and then in the last quarter there's grains. And it's just divided up like a plate. It's super duper recognizable. Anyone who sees that image can either recognizes it as, oh, that's the Canada Food Guide if you're in Canada, or at least can very quickly understand that, oh, this is a way of communicating healthy eating, or, it's some kind of food guide. Still flabbergasted that commission with the Zodiac and stuff was for reals. Ended up amazing, but I did not think that client would get back to you. Yeah, that was a surprise to me. It says, the only official commission I've made was a client that was a musician, and she had really detailed vision of painting she wanted, but struggled to find artists to do that. That's nice if they have like really specific requests. It's kind of nice, but I'm so scared of opening commissions soon. I mean, I love doing commissions. Commissions are great, and honestly, I really love the range of things that people come up with their own commission ideas. Like, in general, I would say, like, the overwhelming majority, like 95% of the commissions that I've done are wonderful, and they're usually things that, like, I would never have thought of myself, but I have someone who looks at my art and they're like, this is really cool, and you would be the perfect artist to do this thing, and they come up with it, and it's, even if it's something that I would never have thought of, like the local university paid me to do painting for their, or it was the Human Rights, Equity, and Inclusion office, and they wanted an image of a braid with different colors, so like different strands in different colors to represent like all the different like focus areas of their office. And so that was really fun, and I've never done a subject like that before, but it was really cool, and so they came to me with an idea and I did it. In general, I love these really creative takes that people come up with. I've been delighted to do a variety of different work, so I don't want to come off like I'm complaining about things, but yes, I tend to just turn them down. But what Gabor said about, I showed some art to some people and people told me to draw portraits and go to galleries, like, yeah, I just turn that stuff down. It does come up and people are like, you should paint a portrait. Like, no. You know, that we're all gonna be sad if I try to do that. You should paint an abstract large acrylic. Like, no, I shouldn't. You should find someone who does that and everyone will be happier. Isn't the food guide nonsensical in terms of actual portions, or did they change it? So the Canada food guide has been changed. So I think it was in like 2017 they changed it. And it's really, really simple and really, really easy to understand. So it used to be they had a pyramid. So I'm sure that other countries have similar things, but it's just it's a way of the government communicating like what a healthy diet looks like. So we used to have a pyramid where it was like you eat a little bit of the treat stuff at the top, and then you eat a little bit more of, it used to have a separate section for dairy and eggs, and then, you know, meat, and then meat or other protein, and then it would have grains, and then at the bottom you have fruits and vegetables. And they changed it. So now they don't have, they made two changes. So the first one is they used to have separate sections for like meat and dairy. And now they've just lumped that into meat and dairy are proteins. You can have them as your protein, but you don't have to have meat or dairy. You can have anything that's a protein. So you could have anything that's protein heavy. So nuts are a source of protein and beans are a source of protein. And so what they have is, okay, this is for something else. This is for another video I'm making. But if you picture this as a plate that's not a deviled egg plate, just imagine this is a regular plate. And so what they did is they split it down the middle and they said, over here they have just a variety of different fruits and vegetables. So over half of it, so half of it is just like fruits and vegetables, and it's just a variety of fruits and vegetables. A quarter of it is protein-rich things like beans and lentils and seeds and animal proteins. And then this quarter is grains. So bread and pasta and rice and oats and whatever. And so they've just divided up this plate and they show you, you know, a quarter is going to be proteins, a quarter is going to be grains, and a quarter is, and half is going to be fruits and vegetables. And it just shows you a variety of those things. And it's really, really, really super duper, you can look it up. If you look up Canada Food Guide, it all comes up. It's really, really super easy to understand, and it's like a really cool visual example. And it's also really nice as a thing to replicate as an art project because it has such a variety of different colors and textures, and you can replace it. So like I won't just copy exactly the same fruits and vegetables that are shown in the government manual. I'll change things up to show some of the textures and stuff that I want to paint. But it's just a plate with food on it. But it's done in a way that's like really simple and really cool to, like really easy to understand what it's communicating. So you don't need any labels to say this is fruits and vegetables. Like obviously it's fruits and vegetables, you can see that. Yeah. And so I want to do this for the purposes of sending it out as a postcard promotional thing for editorial art directors. The beverage is water. In America, it is milk. Yeah, so it used to be, like, there used to be a big milk section in the food pyramid because just the dairy lobby. So it's like, I'm kind of amazed that they were able to get this through because the dairy lobby is so powerful. But it's great. Yeah, it's a really positive change, just in terms of nutrition and like communication. It's really well done, but it's also just, I think, a really cool art project. And so, you know, it's like, I do want to be clear, I do welcome people suggesting things. Whether I'm going to do them or not, like, I'm pretty good about saying no to projects that aren't gonna happen. Especially if people aren't gonna pay me. If people are gonna pay me, then, like, if I feel like I could do a good job, then I just, you know, I try to be realistic about how much it's actually gonna cost to execute. If I'm not getting paid, and people suggest things all the time where it's like, oh yeah, you know, you should do this just because in your copious spare time you should do this. Anyway, in this case, like, I don't know if the original will get sold or whether like the person I was talking to yesterday, it's just a brilliant idea, so I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna send it out. And if she wants to license it or buy the original, like, that's awesome. But I actually, in this case, it was just a suggestion, and these happen every so often. Like, so feel free to suggest things like, oh, would have you considered doing this? And if the answer is no, I'll just tell you no. But in this case, this was one of those rare cases where somebody suggested something a little bit wacky and off the wall, and it turned out to really just solve a problem that I've been looking to solve, where I really wanted, like, okay, I want something that's visually interesting and has this variety and shows my range, and also shows that I'm able to take a concept and communicate it visually without depending on labels and stuff, where I'm actually able to do the visual communication thing, and it shows my range of painting ability, and it's instantly recognizable to like, understandable by people. And I want it to be something that I can put on a postcard and send to art directors. And honestly, like, I was kind of at a loss. I didn't feel like any of my existing work was really quite perfect for this, especially given that a lot of editorial work won't be, you know, traditional botanical work. It'll be food illustration or floral painting or some other commercial product. Like, didn't really know where to go with that. And so that was just wonderful. So that's something that I'm going to do in the next few weeks. Back to art. Love the bit about water. Yeah, it's great. Okay, so anyway, back to this. So you can have some things over here, maybe some other whatevers. Right? And I can have some dark stuff, and I am just sort of creating some dark areas that are in the foreground. And so these are just going to be really, really dark. And then here I'm gonna have, I don't know, some main subject. So if I say here in the middle, I'm gonna put a bird, right? And here I'm gonna put a bird down in the middle, and I'm gonna draw, it's gonna have some high contrast, full value range here, and it's gonna be pink, say. And then as it goes off towards the distance, it's going to get lighter with, say, some leaves here. Did I mention all my art got chalked out when I moved? So much for being picky about light fastness. Oh my goodness. Well. Our legislation won't allow that, and I agree. Somehow I'm less bothered with the soy milk, almond milk stuff than I am with, I don't know, the thing about like tofu cheese, like it's not cheese. It's not cheese. I realize it's the same thing. I realize it's the same thing, but somehow, maybe it's just because I'm used to it more. Anyway, so my impression is that if you have your midtones and you have like more details here, whatever, right? And you have all your details are going to be in this area, and you're going to have all your contrast is going to be in this middle area with these, and you can have all the details of your bird and your tree and your whatever, and you can have these, and you can draw some leafy detail on these. I don't know that I'm really communicating this super well. I have a bird painting that I'm actually going to use in the actual blog post for this that shows this better. It does have a background, one of the few paintings I've done recently that has a background. But then when you get to the actual background, that part is just going to be really, really light valued going out to basically white, right? So then you can have this thing and maybe a few other little colors just, you know, to vary things. So you're going to have and some more of these yellows, maybe like here and there and there. And then in the very, very background, where did that go? And then if I have just the very, very, very background, that one can be yellow, but it can be just the very lightest yellow like this, right? And so if I have something like this where I have a distinction between foreground, middle ground, and background, and I have a distribution of my colors where I have, you know, my middle greens are in a sort of one sort of area, and my you know, deeper chromium oxide greens are not spread evenly through the paper. And I have areas that are only light, and I have the full gamut range. And I have, so if I add all of these things together and I add in some pops of other colors, all of these things together are going to lead to something where I don't have a anything that looks like a camo pattern to the background. Forgive me for jumping in late. I'm not sure what camo means. Camo is short for camouflage. So it's a sort of it's you know, the military pattern that's used for blending in with trees. So one of my students expressed that she was having a problem painting natural backgrounds, where she was painting a bird or some sort of wild animal, and she wanted trees in the background, and she wanted them to be blurry, so that the focus was on the subject. But the problem is, whenever she did that, she would end up with something that looked like she was painting camouflage, like she was painting a military random shapes pattern for blending in with trees, rather than painting blurry trees. Well, now I know one problem in my painting. I tried to make my background dark. Yeah, so that one always seems like, always feels backwards to me, where I'm always tempted to make things that are further away darker, but it turns out that visually they are usually lighter if you're outdoors. If it's obviously it's going to be different if you're painting in a dark room, you have a light on it. So this is my little sketch sheet that I've got here, and I think here's my food guide sketch over here, and I'm gonna get out this other sketchbook, and I'm going to paint these in watercolor for the blog post. Having worked out the order of things that I'm going to say in the blog post, I am now going to switch to watercolor and paint these in watercolor. So, let's see. Sorry. I'm trying to figure out what I need to do what images I need for this blog post. So I have 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Okay. . take this. It's delightful. It's got cat hair all over it. What did I do? Shredded this a little. That picture of the mushrooms growing in the mushroom book made my day. And the good bitch was receiving Lee's package filled with Canadian goodies. I'm glad that finally arrived. Oh my goodness. So relieved. Something maple flavored. Yeah, so about maple flavored. So when I sent out a bunch of watercolor palette things, and I sent things to a few people around the world, and I got some Canadian only snacks, so caramel and coffee crisp and all dressed chips, and I got this gigantic Costco package of maple candy. So they're maple syrup. So they're just maple syrup that has been boiled down. Yeah. It was surprisingly cheap to get this like gigantic thing of maple candies. And now that I've got them, I'm gonna eat one. Stephen, did you know that there's a Canadian maple syrup cartel and a national strategic reserve of maple syrup? Other countries have, you know, different strategic reserves, but in Canada, we have a maple syrup reserve. Superfoods are a fact. Well, yeah. There was a great maple syrup heist, which is, in fact, the highest value theft in Canadian history, where some insiders started draining the strategic maple syrup preserve. And it was found out because they were just replacing the tanks with water, which weighs a different amount. Is that painter's tape? It looks so thin. It is surgical tape. Or like skin tape. Micropore tape. Okay, I'm going to refill my water because as you can see, somebody drank it. They always bring me the tourist bottle shaped like a maple leaf, which has like 50 milliliters. I get so disappointed. Oh my goodness, those things are a ripoff. You just need to get the... You need to get the big ones. Wait. Okay. I'm gonna do, I think, so I'm just gonna use these Roman Schmal paints. I probably need to try different painter's tape since my current one rips paper. I saw one that was pink and said extra sensitive. That seems like a good plan. I often use washi tape, but I'm out of washi tape. Otto tested this skin tape stuff. It's like medical tape or surgical tape. And it works pretty well. It does eventually stick to the paper if you leave it on for too long, but as long as you get it off within a few days, it's pretty fine. So if I paint these guys, I thought Otto's recent look at the newer Schminke super granulating colors was very interesting. I haven't watched that yet. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, here. And then we're gonna do a pink version. So I am just literally just taking these images that I did with colored pencil and I'm doing them with watercolor. I don't use colored pencil very much, but I do find it useful when I'm not trying to do any particular color. I'm just sort of working through ideas. Sometimes having something that doesn't stay wet is kind of handy. Bloom is off the rose a bit for me with pencils. It can be hard to match colors. They don't blend that well. I'm always looking through my 100+ pencils for the right ones to use. So I don't really like pencils for creating anything presentable, I guess. I used to find pencils easier to manage, but yes, I have trouble with blending. I find that I scatter pencils and they roll away and I'm trying to find the right one, and you kind of need more pencils than you need watercolors because you can just mix any colors you need. But what I do use pencils for is like if I'm just doing something really, really rough where I just want a few colors, I'm not trying to color match anything, and I just want to like run through some ideas without waiting for things to dry. I do keep a few pencils for that, and I think that that's pretty useful. Okay, so then there's that. What else am I doing on here? And then I guess if I have these and I make this. Okay, so that's that. And then the final one, we are going to have let's try, no, whatever this is. This seems like a thing. But we are going to do here. My experience, you need quite a bit of pigment from the pencil on the paper before the blending is effective, and they don't move very far, so you have to make very controlled blends. Yes, so my issue with colored pencil, to be honest, is exactly that, is that you need to get all of this pigment, and it's not like here I am using a big brush, and I'm covering a big area to get these big areas covered. And if I was doing this in pencil, I mean, you can see even in this little thing that I did in pencil how scratchy it is, because to get a nice even color application in pencil, I find it just takes a lot more time, and I'm just not that much of a patient person. I, again, admire people who work in pencil. It's just, I struggle to, I guess, use it to its best effect. Like, I find pencils useful for doing very, very rough things, but again, this is where I don't care about color. So if I don't care about color at all, and I just want, if I'm just basically using it like I would use a highlighter or something in my notes to myself, then pencils are useful. That's about the only place where I really use pencils these days. Or colored pencils. I mean, I use graphite. I calculated that for my taste to finish a 9x12 drawing with pencils, it would take around 30-ish hours. With watercolors, about 3 to 4. Yes, exactly. That's what I found, is that I can get the same level of detail with watercolor much, 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 much faster, because the original, the first layers especially are just like, with watercolor, well, you can just cover a large area, just use a larger brush, use more water. She uses both watercolor and normal pencils. Yeah, so that is a thing that I did at some point, when I was, when I didn't really have the control with watercolor yet. Like, there's a learning curve to watercolor. And so when I hadn't quite figured out controlling watercolor yet, Well, as I'm demonstrating a little bit here, I don't seem to worry too much about smooth washes. I just use many washes, and that sort of smooths things out a little bit. Every so often I'll get comments on my YouTube videos that, poor practice. If you mix your watercolor up first and then wait and then paint the paper, pre-wet it, you'll end up with smoother washes. Like, yeah, I know, I just clearly don't care. Anyway, so then we have something like that. Yeah, so then we're gonna use one of these. All right, Evs, what's your snack? Should I be jealous? Apples and peanut butter. Apples and peanut butter are delicious. Maybe I'll have some of that later. The apples we have are not very good to munch on, so the peanut butter is welcome. We got some great apples a couple weeks ago. We just finished them, but they were so good. They were on super sale at the local Middle Eastern grocery store. And I'm doing this budget thing with my younger siblings where I'm on a very strict grocery budget. Well, I don't know about very strict. Spending a lot less on groceries than I usually do. And so they were on sale for 69 cents a pound, I think. I think it was sold by the pound. So like really, really cheap for apples. We got a lot of apples, and then they arrived and they were really nice. They were like really, really nice Honey Crisps. The Red Prince apples are amazing. I don't think that I've ever had Red Prince apples. I'll have to look out for them. Mikey says, hi everyone, sorry I'm late, I had to take a shower. Hi Mikey, how are you? So then let's go with It's true, they're grown in Ontario, I think so. So I hope you'll be able to find them. Okay, cool. I'll keep an eye out. Yeah. We've been getting Honeycrisp recently, which are grown very, very locally. So Mikey, earlier in the video, I went through and sort of did a very, very rough structure of what my thoughts are on what makes camo look like camo and how to avoid it. And I used colored pencil just so that I could do these really quick mock-ups without having to wait for things to dry. But then now I'm making more clearer images for the blog post that I'm making. So these are just the same as these, only for real this time. And then on the opposite page, yeah. The other day I got lost in Google Earth and explored Canada. You have huge uninhabited areas. I was so jealous. I mean, we do have huge uninhabited areas, like, but it's we in the very abstract sense. Like, yes, it's in the same country, but you know, it's not close to where any of us live, and they're not necessarily easy to get to. So, you know, in this, we have huge uninhabited areas in the same way as like you would have, it would be about the same for you to go out to like the uninhabited areas of Russia as for me to go out to some of the most uninhabited areas of Canada, if that makes sense. Like, yes, they're there, they're in the right country, but they're not necessarily like super easy to get to. The areas where people live in Canada tend to be quite dense. But it is something that, you know, that I've definitely considered in a longer term way. I mean, I do still want to live near a city, so that does limit me. Like, I can't just go where there's no one, because I do need some amount of social interaction, but you know, we do want to get some property sometime in the next few years. The most remote places where people live in Canada have so many issues just living there. Yeah, I mean, like, if you consider the territories, for example, like there are no roads into Nunavut. You have to fly. So, and like their largest town has 10,000, but it's like really small, and all their food needs to be flown in, all their housing, like all their construction materials are flown in, so they all live in portables. There's like real issues with access to education, access to food, access to services. Finland has a really sparse population. Yes, but I think that it's similar to Canada in some sense, where like a lot of the population is clustered in a few cities, right, Cyan? We were talking about apples earlier. A bag of apples in Alaska is like 110 bucks US. Yeah. There's definitely like, you'll see pictures from grocery stores in the Canadian territories, and it's just absurd. Like, would you like this cello-packed lettuce? You can have this lettuce. It's only $48. Like, you know, it it's a little, yeah. So they get, if you live up in the territories, there's something called the Northern Allowance, which is a government subsidy where people there get extra money attached to their paychecks, like in addition to their pay from their employer. They also get a northern allowance that's to cover the cost of living. They're really, really high there. But just in general, it's just expensive. I can get to Forest just by walking 5 minutes, and I live in the city. Okay, so that is very different from Canada then, because I don't think that like in any of our larger cities that's really possible. I live in a somewhat smaller city, so I can, if I bike like 10 kilometers out, then I get to farmland, and like we do have patches of forest, but yeah, like there's nothing really, really nearby. Oh yes, I don't want to live in the wilderness, but I really miss seeing untouched nature, not just small patches of forest like in Europe. Yeah, I mean, like I'm glad that we have those forests, but it's not like you have to understand Canada's so big that like where we all live in like this little like mostly in the warmer areas. Like there's this little band um along the coasts because of the like seaside effect. It's warmer, and along like right along the border with the US we have especially in Ontario where the Canadian border dips down for the Great Lakes. So we have the Golden Triangle, the Golden Horseshoe, which is just like around the edge of Lake Ontario, basically, from Toronto and then out east and west. And we have over 50% of our population lives just in that little teeny tiny horseshoe. And then, the rest mostly is it just in a few cities like along the coast, on the west coast, and then up in Quebec, Montreal, and stuff. And then the rest is just like, yes, most of Canada is unpopulated, but most of Canadians don't live within, like, don't have access to those parts. Okay, so now I'm gonna paint some browns here. Nothing like heading out from a small lake and getting it onto Lake Ontario. Yeah, so that's one thing, Cyan, that we've wondered about. My husband and I are looking at buying property somewhere, and he grew up, his family, there's a culture in Canada of going, like, cottaging, going to the like going up north or going to the cottage, and my I mean, I'm a child of immigrants, so my parents weren't as invested in this necessarily, but my husband's family, his grandparents actually ran housekeeping cottages up in Muskoka, which is our glacial area. So where the glaciers receded, they scraped up. It's called the Canadian Shield. And so where the glaciers receded, they scraped up a lot of earth and leaving just like granite cliffs and stuff. And so it's a very unique sort of look to that area. And when we started looking at buying property, we very much were looking in the local area, and we're both, I guess, somewhat used to the look of the Canadian Shield. It turns out that this area is very, very expensive, so we started looking at other areas as well. But it's interesting when you're used to a certain look of what nature looks like. It's, you'll see flatter land that doesn't have as many weird little lakes and cliffs and stones, and it just doesn't look quite right. So yeah, it's been interesting trying to adapt. Like I think we do want some of that look. Sounds very Finnish thing, having a cottage in the middle of nowhere and escaping there. Yeah, so people will go up for the weekend or, for a few weeks in the summer and go to the cottage. And we're not, at this point, I think we're planning on buying a property and building our house and like actually living somewhere further out. But it's something that my husband certainly grew up with, was going to his grandparents. I mean, his grandparents lived there as well, but they ran housekeeping cottages. So so Jordan grew up going to the cottage. Having a camp, which is what it's called in upstate New York, the cottage is key for relaxation. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think certainly in southern Ontario, it really is like people talk about going up north. And that can mean different things for different people. Some people will go camping. A lot of people will rent properties, and then those who can afford it have a second home. I do it the other way around, live in a chalet and then have a small apartment in town. You know what? That feels, I've also considered that, like having what's it called, a pieta, a little little landing pad for my occasional visits into the city. I will buy a cottage at one point and move there when I'm old and grumpy. Yeah, I mean that's our plan. Well, we're gonna buy land hopefully soon, and then build a cottage, a home, while we're young and grumpy and able to do physical labor. I'm already old and grumpy. If only there were proper broadband in quiet areas. Maybe it beats the purpose for some, but I can't work without a broadband. Well, yeah. There's definitely, we do definitely have some questions about the quality of internet, but it is getting better. And you know what? That is one of the advantages of some of the areas that we were looking at in Quebec is that they are like really shockingly well connected to services. Have says semi-young and grumpy. Yes, exactly. We are, I mean, both of us, but probably Jordan especially has been, old and grumpy from the moment he was born. But at least while our bodies are functional enough that we can build things. Getting older, it's never easy to turn, like how you say it, turn to new towns, like another decade, you mean? I don't know that we have like a specific saying for that, but getting a decade older. Oh. I think I've always been grumpy. Yeah. Moving to Finland would be good, but the golden handcuff is holding me back. Sorry, what's a golden handcuff? I'm a little confused. I feel like there's a lot of sayings in this chat that don't translate. there was a time many years ago where we were seriously looking at moving to Sweden because of the thing in Canada where, like, if you live near civilization, you live like really, like, then you're in like a very dense city. Like, we're very very urban population. In, like, yes, there's a lot of nature in Canada, but it's like really far out. And when we were looking, there were places like Finland. Finland was also on the list. But Sweden was interesting because you could get things that were like really accessible to a city. So like either right in a city or just on the outskirts of a city, but still like very close to transit, and you could get to work and you could live in an urban setting, but also have access then to nature. The golden handcuff is usually used to describe when somebody has a job and lifestyle that is not possible to replicate elsewhere. I haven't heard that expression, but I empathize with it, and that makes sense to me. It is frequently used to describe Silicon Valley salaries and problems. Ah, yes. Okay. Uh-huh. My brother-in-law right now, he works for NVIDIA technically in San Francisco, but he managed to get back to Canada before, well, actually right as the border was closing down, but you know, he's a Canadian citizen, so he could get across. He's moving home. And so he's working officially in San Francisco, but he's living in Southern Ontario, which is great for finances. Not so great for some other things, but I could probably work elsewhere as software engineering, but my boyfriend is not too keen to move. Yeah, so I feel like software has, like, the pandemic has sort of changed some things in terms of the software field. We'll see how long they last, but certainly we used to have some concerns about, like, well, we can't really, like, even though software is the sort of thing that could be done from anywhere, technically, like most software jobs are not remote, but that seems to have changed a fair bit recently. So Anyway, I wonder whether it'll last. Just the change where it seems like, at least for right now, a lot of software seems to have gone remote, like fully remote, and in a long-term way, like beyond when the expected end of the pandemic is, like offices have restructured and stuff. Yeah, I mean, my husband's work though, like they changed their work structure where like now people who are working remotely now who are able to will never be expected to be in the office full time again. Um, where they'll have a meeting every week or two or something. Growing up, I was a corporate brat. We moved all over the place. When Dad worked for Pepsi, but this was in the 70s and 80s. Now everything has changed now with the internet. So, I mean, I personally like having a separation between work and home. I've been finding the pandemic a little hard that way because I'm working. I mean, I'm lucky to have a home studio where I can do work, but I liked the structure of having a studio that I go to that's separate from my home, which I still have, but it's just, it's not really safe for all of us to be in the studio at the same time. So I've been giving space for my studio mates to go in who might need it more. And also, I'm, because of some immune issues between myself and my husband, I don't want to put us at risk, so I'm being very cautious, and I haven't been going into the studio. So I've been working from home. I don't really love it so much. I've adapted, but I do like being able to go into the office. So I totally understand that. My husband, on the other hand, really thrives on remote work. He would rather do that all the time. Okay. So, then let's go with some, yeah, rather than bright yellow, let us do this one. Worked a couple days at home. It was horrible. Even my job is easy to do remotely, but it was so hard to stop and separate work and free time. Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on like your own personality. Like I struggle with that a lot. And you know, even separating work and work, to be honest, like my you know, I'm an illustrator and I find it really easy to get drawn into, oh, I'm gonna do computer stuff today, like editing or answering emails, and then I get sucked into that, and then I get distracted by social media, and then I get distracted by you know, I just get sucked into even work things that are uh, you know, not really illustrating. They're something else. They're, oh, I'm gonna answer these emails from these people. I'm gonna, yeah, you can't get away from work. You can't get away from home. You can't get away from, it's a, like, I have definitely run into that problem. But it's also, you know, some people just handle that differently. Like my husband just, he works really well from home. He's very effective. He has his office. He goes in, he does his work. He just doesn't cope really well with the distractions of a noisy office. I just zone in so badly to work that I forget to eat and suddenly notice that, oh, sat here doing 9 hours doing this work stuff. I should eat something. I do that all the time. But it's also not necessarily like the most productive work. Like one of the things that's actually really useful about having my studio is that I don't have my editing computer there. So if it's not an urgent email, I don't answer it. If it's not like, yeah, I have, you know, devices, but I don't have, like, I'm not going to be answering, you know, whatever, just general emails. I'm not going to be getting drawn into, oh, maybe I need to edit this, maybe I need to change my website, maybe I need to post to social media, maybe like I don't do that stuff when I'm at the studio as much because I don't have a computer there, because it's like I'm there for painting. That's my job. I go there to paint. And because my home studio has my editing computer, it has my other stuff, it's like, even though, you know, it's still work, it's still an office, it's, yeah. And then when I'm making food, I think of all those little buggies in my code, how to fix them, and even at bed, I still think about the code. It's just horrible. Hi, Lana, how are you? Physical separation helps a lot. I just don't have extra rooms. Yeah, we're lucky. We do have extra rooms, so that definitely does help. Where I have a home studio, my husband has his home office. I mean, you can maybe hear him a little bit here because I have the door open, but Shminka brought a Yinmen oil paint out. Ooh, I guess they will add it to their watercolor collection soon. That's cool. Missed y'all a lot. Missed you. How have you been? Okay. Paula, did I pack a Yinmen dot in your package? Trying to remember who I sent to. What I sent to who. Yeah, my first core paint hits Yinmen blue. I feel special. Alice checked it out in the trash. No. Okay. Cyan, I'm not sure if I may have popped one into the package for you too, maybe. I'm not sure what I sent to who, but I might have some Yinmen for you as well. Lana, do you have the core one? Did you end up getting the core one? No. If I didn't send you one, Cyan, I can pop one in an envelope and hopefully it'll arrive quicker. I promised dots to a bunch of people, and I sent some in the boxes, and then I completely forgot to send just the dots. So those just went out. But I do have more of it, and I'm happy to just, like, I got it to experiment, basically. Lana, I know that you were expecting a shipment from Core, so you weren't sure if you were going to get it yourself, but I can send you a sample if you don't have the Core one. Wait a bit, Lee. I want to contact Core again about the shipments. I got some dots from others, which I need to add first. Okay. Sure. Anyway, okay, so I'm gonna let these dry. A little bit. And then I think I'm gonna make one more over here on the other side. And maybe a, is that pigment best suited for industry or art? Not to sound too dramatic. I mean, why not both? Yeah, it's very heavily granulating. Then I've got this thing. This neat little thing, which is, Ev put me onto this years ago, these little like circle template things. Oh, they're so nice. Normal white chocolate is not white, it's rather yellow in hue. Makes me feel uncomfortable. I should have chocolate around too. So I'm gonna draw some circles using this part. Let's pull this off a little. Mine is turquoise. Why? You don't like turquoise? I'll trade you. It is a time saver. It's really neat. Do you like it? Let's get another one here. And one here. Why not? Sure. Okay, so then let's use one of these colors. What should I use? What should I use? What should I use? I'm going to use Perylene Green. This is the Perylene Green Dark, which it has like a baked goods smell. I think Cyan was the one who brought it up, but it has a scent and it smells sweet, which is really weird because it's this dark green, not something that you would expect to smell sweet like this. In fact, this dark green in Polish, it turns out they described it in Polish and they described the hue, Roman Schmal described the hue as rotten green, which is apparently the way that this color is described in Polish. I thought it was just an auto-translate issue, but no. Polish is just poetic like that. I have to go too, gotta stretch out my shoulder because it's not happy with me right now. Thanks for the lively. See you guys tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Bye. What time is it? All right, it's almost 5. Yeah, I just have one last image. I'm waiting for this to dry out while I work on this. But then the last thing is making tonal range and distributing that between the foreground and background of the painting. I'm a bit off screen. I am a bit off screen, aren't I? Okay. Better? So. So I was going to replicate something like this little sketch on here with watercolor, but I don't think that it's working so great. Because I got a little carried away with painting the dark areas first, and I think I'm losing my patience and just painting poorly. So I'm just going to leave this be instead. I'm going to peel off. I think I'm done with painting for the day. I think that's been, I think sometimes I just need to recognize that I've reached my limit. But these are probably dry, so I can peel off the tape and have these samples ready, which I will make into a blog post, hopefully tonight. After I get some rest and some snacks into me. Yeah, I'm getting near 3 hours, which is about my limit before I start really needing to stretch my legs and have a snack, take a break. So I think we are at the end of this, and this idea that I was going to paint something else is just not going to happen. But basically this is the concept. So I will be making this into a better structured blog post for reference, but how to avoid making backgrounds look like a camo pattern. I mean, first of all, there's a selection of colors, so although we tend to think of nature as these colors, and that's why camo is these colors, if you choose any other colors like pinks, you can definitely have backgrounds that are pink, that are a natural background. So be creative about how you're placing your subject, and this, even though it's very much a camo pattern, it reads as less camo than this. You can also mix your colors, and again, this is going to, not that this is really a background that you would want to use for anything, but if you mix in some other colors, you can break up that traditional camo pattern. If you sort your colors so that you don't have all of your colors evenly spread throughout your image, you're going to have something that looks less like a camo background. The final thing is, if you're painting a real object, it will interact with light. So no matter what you're painting, you should have darks, very darks and very lights spread around your subject. In particular, if you are painting a real subject, you're going to have from background to foreground. The background's going to be blurrier, less contrast, and lighter valued, whereas your foreground is going to be higher contrast and darker value. And so you want to place do this sort of thing, but you want to specifically have your full gamut range so that some parts of your image are completely white, and those are going to be either the furthest in the background or the areas of brightest focus are going to have the highest contrast. In the foreground, you're going to have some very, very dark areas that are out of focus, and in the background you're going to have some lighter areas that are also out of focus. And yeah, and so I'll make this all into a nice, easily digestible blog post for you all, but that's it for right now. Thank you so much. If you're not already on my Discord channel for anyone watching. I have my Discord link is in the video description. And we chat throughout the week about all sorts of nerdy art stuff. And I will be posting some more videos this week, have some stuff in the works, and then I'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Okay. And I'm dropping everything. Bye-bye, guys. Bye. Don't forget to hit like. It really helps the channel.